Dr. Ashley Matthews. Now, all she had to go off of were the autopsy photos and the ME reports themselves. And while she does say that on paper, Tripp's death does appear to be due to ligature hanging, she adds that without photos from the scene itself, like when they found him, she can't opine on the position that the body was found in, or whether it corresponds to the injuries that she can see on Tripp's body. What she did do was her freaking homework, though. In her report, Dr. Matthew writes that based on her own research, branches that are 5 inches in diameter are reportedly able to hold the weight of approximately 115 pounds. The branch that the Brazils found looks barely more than 2 inches in diameter.
And how heavy was Tripp?
He's 119 pounds.
I'm not good at math.
It's not math,
but it's not math.
No, especially when you consider like the drop force and any sort of struggle afterwards.
Right.
And we actually have a photo of the branch. Jennifer took it home with her, and she can fit her thumb and pointer finger all the way around it. Plus, even if the branch could hold Tripp, without a ladder or a stepstool or something, I'm just not sure about the physics of the situation anyway. And what really got me thinking when they went out there is the fact that there was a deer stand about 30 feet away from this tree. Investigators write that the ratchet strap used in the hanging could appear to match the rope from that deer stand. The only question is, like, if Tripp stopped by this deer stand to get this strap, why not make use of the actual deer stand and its ladder while you're right there? Why walk another 30 feet to a tree on the edge of a gully where the act would be far more difficult? And Cody said that he has worked hangings where people have even used their phone chargers as a mechanism. Tripp had one with him that night and abandoned it long before he even made it to the base of. He actually like walked all that way.
I mean, I'm still stuck on where his boots were. Like, why would he?
I just don't understand the path that he would have taken on his own.
And like not run into other people.
Right. But that is assuming that all his ground is like Bynum comes up each spear. And Kinney also says that in the 3 years with the department, he had never heard of any law enforcement involvement with like Tripp's. And both he and Bynum insist that they had no idea who was on that four-wheeler when the chase began. Except then, why did Bradshaw call Gill at around 1:21 saying that deputies were looking for Tripp? Oh, yeah, obviously, this is concerning to Tripp's parents. Well, by the time Bynum and Kinney are interviewed, there's an explanation. Apparently, at 12:59 a.m., dispatch received an anonymous call from someone who said that they knew the individual on the four-wheeler was Tripp and they had his location. The caller said that he was spotted behind a church that was like down the road from the crash site or where the ATV stopped.
Wait, just like a random call, like from someone, and this wasn't known, right? There wasn't like an alert that like no bolo, no one knew that they were looking for someone. It's just a random call saying like, I don't know if you know this, but Tripp is out behind this church.
And by the way, this is like 1 o'clock in the morning. To your point, like yes, you might have heard some like
or it's like steam siren, like
commotion.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like they put out this like alert or like there's no news about this yet. There's like nothing. But there was a 911 call with someone saying that here's the person you were looking for. How do they even know they're looking for?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And here's what stinks about this even more. Anything about who this caller was or how they knew it was Tripp is redacted in all of the materials that we received. They will not reveal who called. And they say it's because the caller wanted to remain anonymous. But, like, it makes zero sense to me. Like, you don't need to protect a witness here. This is a straightforward suicide case.
There's nothing to witness, right?
What everyone is saying, like, just tell us who called. Where is that person in the community? Like, this case has gotten traction in the community. That one person could probably solve a lot. Where are they? Also, this isn't like a neighborhood.
No, it's like reminds me of like where I grew up, right? Where there's just like land and land and there's some trees and a couple houses here and there, but not like on top of each other, right?
There are really just like a few properties out this way, literally just 3 that are even within like a half mile where this caller is saying like he's in like police. And by the way, one of those people claims that they weren't even home that night. So who called?
Could it be the people that Tripp was riding with? Like, wouldn't they have told Kenny who was with them? Like, can he stop them though?
I'm sure they would have, like, given Tripp's name, given the opportunity, but Kenny didn't stick around. It seems like once Tripp, like, takes off, and then, like, everything happens kind of quick. Like, Bynum comes up, he takes off, Kenny, like, jumps back in his car, basically tells these other guys to go home. And Jennifer says that she doesn't think any of these people were the ones to have called. But you want to know something weird? I don't know how common, like, the Bynum last name is in this part of Arkansas, but one of the 3 houses that I mentioned, like, in a
The only places that are
by the
close
church,
to this area.
right, it's tied to someone with the last name Bynum. But here's the caveat, like, we pulled a bunch of records. I can't tie any of those Bynums to Deputy Bynum. Oh, so it might just be, like, the weirdest coincidence of the century. So, we've got all of that.
All of that.
On to my wait what moment number 2. So we don't know why the chase started. An anonymous person calls into ID Tripp as the kid that they're looking for.
And we don't know why or how they know that.
So Bradshaw calls Jill while Jennifer is on the phone with Tripp. Parents tell Tripp, turn yourself in. He says he's going to start walking toward the blue lights,
Which he can see from wherever he is.
Then they get the weird text from him, but when they get out to the location where his phone last pinged, there is nothing.
And no one.
So they had to start searching themselves, right? Former law enforcement dad, I told you, he set up his own ring. He knows what he's doing. Now, once other first responders showed up, they began guiding the search and setting up their own ring. But there are 3 weird things about this search. One, the location of Tripp's things that are found makes no sense. So the road that they're on, 409, it is a small road, forest, woods on either side, few houses. They're traveling east, left to right. They hit the berm, the ATV stops, and it actually, like, turns them around. So now they're, like, facing west. Tripp runs into the woods just north of the road. That's where one of his boots and his hat is found. Then, the call about him being spotted at 12:59, that is, like, west of this road. This, like, behind this church area, right? But then all of Tripp's other stuff, and eventually him, is found south of the road. So he would have had to cross back over, which is just odd to me when you really look at the map and also like how spread out everything is. And I just don't understand the path that he would have taken on his own. And like not run into other people. Right. But that is assuming that all of the items found were left by Tripp. But what if they weren't? Where Tripp's sweatshirt and phone charger end up being found? This is the second weird thing. Jill says that he swears he had walked through that area over a dozen times that night. He never saw anything at all. Now, it was a camo hoodie.
Okay, but they're literally looking for a
They knew what he was wearing.
hoodie. Like, yeah, yes. Like, you see it because that's what you're looking for.
Yes. So that's weird. I don't know how to explain it. Again, it was dark. He probably could make excuses. Let me tell you about weird thing number 3. So remember Sandra Davis? She's the neighbor whose house Tripp hid at that one time. So she also had like come out to help with the search. And she told us that when she and her husband got to the search area to help on November 4th, there were a lot of people by that point. So her and her husband told a nearby deputy that he would go park at a friend's house in this place called Crow Creek. But according to Sandra, the deputy responded, "You better not go to Crow Creek. That's done been searched. You are not going to Crow Creek. You go to Crow Creek, I'll have you arrested."
For what?
Sandra's husband asked. And apparently the deputy just said, "Don't go there. It's already been checked." Except, guess where Tripp ends up being found that very same day? In the area of Crow Creek. Which, weird. They'll say that area was right outside of the search ring, the one that the deputies set up. So it theoretically actually shouldn't have been checked when Sandra's husband was being told that they'd already looked there. So, fine. Say the parents missed the items because it was dark or whatever reason you want to give. And say that everyone's wires just got crossed or there was miscommunication, or like straight up bad luck, and that's why Trip wasn't found earlier by Sergeant. Let's then talk about how he would have gotten to the place where he was found. It was a game and fish warden who found Trip. And in the Game and Fish Commission's incident report, they reported the exact coordinates of his location. So Cody, the PI, and the Brazils took those values, went out into the woods themselves to try and find the exact tree where Trip would have been found. And they did. They even later got confirmation from some law enforcement materials that it was the right tree. Now, if you look on a map, the exact location is about a mile and a half south of where Trip jumped off his ATV, like as the crow flies. But it was pitch black out there that night. There is no walking path or anything that Trip could have taken. The terrain is what Gil described as, quote, violent ground, like broken bottles, barbed wire, ditches, snakes. And he knows this because he and Cody have walked this path that Trip would have taken multiple times since his death at night. And they say that it would have taken hours on foot. And that's with shoes. Trip's first boot, remember, is found pretty close to the ATV. The second boot is found in the woods, the ones like south of the road, maybe like a quarter of the way into the trees, like based on where he's found. That means that he would have had to have made this like hours-long trek without shoes over whatever is on the forest floor, man-made or otherwise. So riddle me this. When Trip's parents go up to the funeral home and get their first chance to look at Trip's feet, Gil says there wasn't so much as a scratch on them. Why? Now, he was wearing socks, and in one of the autopsy photos, you can actually see them. They look dirty. It appeared like there's even maybe a hole in the right one, like a toe is popping out. But there aren't like
of the socks to help us determine if we actually like walk that. And I saw some the way he did, like so far apart.
I mean, it looks like, based on where it is, like the first boot might have come off when he jumped the fence. So I don't know if like walking it became kind of uneven. Like I don't know. I think I would still keep my boot on.
Yeah, at least one of them.
And listen, we asked Tripp's parents if they've been able to examine the socks because again, I feel like if you walked out that way, you'd be able to tell for sure. The answer is no, because even though Tripp's boots and his phone and ATV and charger and sweatshirt were all returned to the family, for some reason the sheriff's office won't release Tripp's clothing, including his socks.
Okay, but why? Like this is a what do we call it? Like a closed suicide case, right?
Yes, ma'am. Now, meanwhile, for what it's worth, Gil says that if you were to drive from where the pursuit ended to the like area of the road closest to where Tripp's body was found, that's like a 5-minute drive tops. And in that scenario, if someone did drive Tripp that night, that would also explain why the canines lost his scent so quickly in the woods. But you know what? Let's keep suspending reality. Let's pretend there is a good reason why they won't let Tripp's family have the clothes that Tripp was wearing when he died by suicide, they say. We'll just take them at their word that he walked shoeless through the forest for hours to take his life. This is the next wait what moment. Do the logistics of the hanging itself actually make sense? I mean, surely this part has to be completely solid, right? For them to close this case and to be so sure, this has to be rock solid. It has to make every other weird thing that's happened up to this point easy to write off.
But this is a crime junkie episode, so I'm betting that's not how it goes.
Of course it's not. When family went out to the tree that Tripp was found hanging from, they found the exact sawed-off branch that was cut down to get Tripp's body. It was still right there on the ground at the base. And once they saw it, they had an immediate concern. You see, the family consulted with an independent medical examiner and forensic pathologist out of Kentucky. Her name was Dr. Ashley Matthews. Now, all she had to go off of were the autopsy photos and the ME reports themselves. And while she does say that on paper, Tripp's death does appear to be due to ligature hanging, she adds that without photos from the scene itself, like when they found him, she can't opine on the position that the body was found in, or whether it corresponds to the injuries that she can see on Tripp's body. What she did do was her freaking homework, though. In her report, Dr. Matthew writes that based on her own research, branches that are 5 inches in diameter are reportedly able to hold the weight of approximately 150 pounds. The branch that the Brazils found looks barely more than 2 inches in diameter.
So how heavy was Tripp?
119 pounds.
I'm not good at math.
It's not math,
but it's not math.
No, especially when you consider like the drop force and any sort of struggle afterward, right? And we actually have a photo of the branch. Jennifer took it home with her, and she can fit her thumb and pointer finger all the way around it. Plus, even if the branch could hold Tripp, without a ladder or a step stool or something, Cody's not sure about the physics of the situation anyway. And what really got Cody thinking when they went out there is the fact that there was a deer stand about like 30 feet away from this tree. Investigators write that the ratchet strap used in the hanging, quote, appeared to match the rope from that deer stand. But then Cody's question is like, if Tripp stopped by this deer stand to get this strap, why not make use of the actual deer stand and its ladder while you're right there? Why walk another 30 feet to a tree on the edge of a gully where the act would be far more difficult? And Cody said that he has worked hangings where people have even used their phone chargers as a mechanism. Tripp had one with him that night and abandoned it long before he even made it to the deer stand. Also, how did Tripp even find the strap? Because Cody interviewed the owner of that deer stand, and he said that he cut that strap down 2 years earlier when he first put the deer stand up, and he hadn't seen it since because it had gotten like buried under foliage. He said that he forgot it was even there, which to me raises the question of how Tripp would have possibly found it in the dark unless somehow he knew to look for it.
And investigators believe that's where the strap came from.
Maybe they were just making an educated guess. I don't know if they spoke to the owner of the deer stand like Kobe did. And personally, I haven't even seen the rope that they're saying it looks similar to. So I don't even know if it's really a match. So I mean, it's certainly a possibility that the strap could have come from somewhere else. And listen, while we're on the ratchet strap, there's another thing. The autopsy report states that it was tied into a slip knot with 2 loose ends. But Jennifer said Gil still tied Tripp's fishing line onto him and sincerely doubted that he would know how to make a sophisticated knot like that. In the end, Dr. Matthew said this.
In the presence of a circumstance such as the decedent being involved in a law enforcement pursuit and reportedly fleeing from them into the woods, I would have liked to have had more information regarding Tripp's behavior and health history to confidently rule his death a suicide. In my opinion, the manner of death would best be classified as undetermined, as the role of law enforcement, if any, in the death is unclear.
You know what would make it clear? That body cam footage. Yeah. So let's go back to that and take a good hard look at what we have in light of everything you now know. At 12:40 a.m., Bynum turns his body cam on. That's when we get the start of the pursuit. At 12:42, Tripp takes off on foot. There's no more vehicle chase. Bynum parks his truck, gets out to check the four-wheeler, manhandling it with his bare hands, and then at 12:51, Bynum turns his camera off. The next video that comes from his camera is from when it's turned back on at 1:40 a.m. All of a sudden, he's wearing latex gloves. So 12:51, camera off. Then 12:59 is when they get that anonymous call telling them that it's Tripp and Tripp is in the woods behind the church. 1:21, Tripp calls his mom, tells her he can see the blue lights. He's going to walk toward them, turn himself in, say goodnight. We have no idea what is happening with Tripp in the next moment. But at 1:40 a.m., Bynum's body cam starts again. He's got his gloves on. A minute later, 1:41, that's when Jennifer receives that text message from Tripp's phone that I read earlier.
And are we sure that Bynum turned the camera off in between, or do we just maybe not have access to that footage?
You can literally see his hand reach up and manually turn away. Now, based on their statements, this 49-minute window should be the time where Sergeant Kinney was getting the trailer. But we have no way to know that for sure because there is no body cam for him. Now, what's unclear, though, is if there was camera footage and then it just didn't get released in the FOIA, or if he was not wearing a camera at all that night. I know when I see him on the 140 video, he's just in a polo, so he didn't have one on then, and I don't know about both. But interestingly, I know at least one other person was wearing a body cam that night, and it was actually one of the deputies that went looking for Tripp after he was spotted in the woods behind the church. But when Jennifer requested all of the body cam footage from that night, she just got Bynum's with that missing time, and then another disc, but that disc was totally blank.
I mean, is anyone freaking out about this? This feels like it has to be some kind of violation. What's the point of body cams if you can just turn them off willy-nilly?
Tripp's family is freaking out about this. Me and our reporter, Nicole, are freaking about this. We are all freaking out about this now. And listen, we asked the sheriff's office for their body cam policy, and it states that deputies are required to turn on their body cams for every official interaction with the public, whether that is a routine conversation, an arrest, or something more serious. The cameras are supposed to help back up things like probable cause and give supervisors a way to review a deputy's actions later. But here's the key. Once that camera is on, it is supposed to stay on until, quote, the event is completed in order to ensure the integrity of the recording, end quote.
Which makes sense.
There are a few exceptions. Deputies are not allowed to record communication with other officers without permission, undercover officers, confidential informants, or private locations like bathrooms. Okay? Now, I don't know if Bynum's actions fall under one of these exceptions, It sounds like each deputy has to kind of decide for themselves when an event is completed. So maybe when the chase ends and the ATV is stranded, that's complete in Bynum's mind. But then that doesn't totally add up because why turn it back on as you're getting ready to tow it?
Right, because to me, if you know you're going to tow it, towing it would be the end of the event. Then like you're like with it until it's done being towed.
I also want to note something weird about the policy document itself that the sheriff's office sent us. So it's this like 3-page document with numbered bullets. But at the end of the first page, it skips from 3B, when and how to use the BWC, to 3D, restrictions on using the BWC. C is just missing. When we asked the sheriff's office about this, a representative said he never noticed the typo before, and it, quote, feels safe to say it is a clerical error.
Feel safe about this. Because I hope that makes me feel safe. And also, like, I'm thinking, like, making a Word document, it's kind of automatic. It's just like, literally, like, I enter in the message.
Okay, sorry. So do with that what you will. 12:51, camera goes off. 1:40, it's back on. Invite him. Wearing this stuff.
And the camera cut just makes no sense. Like, if you're gonna turn it off at all, like, why are you turning it back on? Like, why not just
call the event complete? Like, yeah. It's not like there's a new. This is the same thing. It's not like someone new comes in. Like, you're not dealing with a new citizen or like, why? Yes, why turn it back on? Why just when you're trying to get the 4-wheeler onto the trailer?
Well, and like, why are you wearing gloves now? Like, now, especially maybe?
Now, like, listen, I think some people could say, well, he's like processing the ATV now. Like, it's evidence. But the problem I have with that is, like, if you go back to before the camera turned off, you said he was like, he's manhandling that thing with bare hands. He is raw dogging that ATV. So the question that the family's PI Cody has, the question that he has raised is whether it's possible that Bynum maybe hit the 4-wheeler during the chase. Cody actually has the 4-wheeler in his possession now, and before getting into law enforcement, he actually was an EMT, which means that like he's worked quite a few threats. He said that it really looks to him like the 4-wheeler was struck by a vehicle. You just can't prove that it was Bynum's vehicle.
So, not that we followed a ton of protocol so far, isn't there like sort of police tactic where they can use their vehicles like purposely?
Yeah,
like hit another vehicle to stop it in pursuit?
It's called a precision immobilization technique. Yeah. The sheriff's office pursuit policy, though, again, like we referenced that earlier, the one that we received specifically states officers may not intentionally use their vehicle to bump or ram a suspect vehicle to get them to stop. So,
okay, do we see anything like a collision on the body cam?
We don't. Like, we have the pursuit, or at least the end of the pursuit, right? But, like, the problem is the camera is, like, right at Bynum's chest, and he's, like, right on top of Tripp's 4-wheeler the whole time. Like, you can see the moment that both vehicles supposedly jumped that hill, but it's really loud with, like, the sirens and the 4-wheeler engine, so it's hard to know if there was a collision. What I think is so interesting is this part, though. Deputy Bynum gets out of his truck. He's surveying the area. He's looking at the 4-wheeler. And Kenny comes to follow, asking him what happened. And he said this.
There's going to be a white male on a camouflage hoodie and blue jeans. Look like he went off that way. Did he roll it or something? Hey, turned it and jumped off and took off running across the field. Yeah, he left it quite tight. Yeah, I got it. Step rail did.
Wait, which step rail was that?
Bynum. The part that caught me is the I got him. Like, what does he mean you got him? Because, like, no, you didn't. No, different run. You were chasing him, yeah, and he, like, ran off into the woods. You told him to stop. He didn't. What do you mean you got him? Could it be that you got him, like, your truck is the ATV? Now, you can see Bynum's step rail is bent, like, in the body footage, but it's hard to clearly see the front of his truck. And I can't say whether the bent step rail is from hitting the ground when they, like, went up that, like, berm or whatever, or if it's from something else. Though, there is something besides the the body cam or the truck damage that could tell us if something happened to Trip that night. Or rather, someone. I haven't told you this yet, but for the entire duration of the pursuit, and presumably that 49-minute blackout, Bynum had a civilian ride along with him. What? Yep. Another set of eyes and ears witnessed that night. Someone who could put this whole thing to rest if only his statements and actions didn't raise more questions. And just wait, because the biggest shock of this entire case comes at the very end. Guys, we are finally rolling into summer, and I am ditching the sweaters, packing away the coats, but I am still wearing quints, because quints is quality I wear all year round. In the field, on stage, at the office, quints, quints, quints. Their clothing and accessories are timeless and long-lasting, because they focus on high-quality, beautiful everyday essentials, like 100% European linen pants, dresses, and tops with styles starting at $32. And you guys, everything at Quints is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. No lie, I had a silk skirt from a big department store, and I had a silk skirt from Quints. I'm dead serious, my Quints one has held up way better, and was way cheaper, and machine washable. Because I nobody got time or money for dry cleaning, but I want to look like I do. Elevate your summer wardrobe. Go to quince.com/PrimeJunkie for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's quince.com/PrimeJunkie for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/PrimeJunkie. I heard you built a new deck.
Hey, how about a deck work?
Is it all decorators? When you build with decorators, the neighbors will notice. Decorators, stand out. Visit decorators.com to learn more. That's decorators with a K.
We don't know much about 21-year-old Preston Cox, who was Deputy Trey Bynum's ride-along the night of November 2nd and into the early morning hours. Preston never got back to us for this episode. But through Tripp's mom, Jennifer, we learned that Preston didn't know Tripp personally. And from what we've been able to gather, it doesn't seem like Preston was a part of some civilian program like the Explorers or anything like that. What we know is that Preston was a mechanic who wanted to try his hand at law enforcement. That Preston, when you too, that's quince.com/PrimeJunkie for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/PrimeJunkie. I heard about the new deck.
Hey, how about a deck work?
Is it all decorators? When you build with decorators, the neighbors will notice. Decorators, stand out. Visit decorators.com to learn more. That's decorators with a K.
We don't know much about 21-year-old Preston Cox, who was Deputy Trey Bynum's ride-along the night of November 2nd and into the early morning hours. Preston never got back to us for this episode. But through Tripp's mom, Jennifer, we learned that Preston didn't know Tripp personally. And from what we've been able to gather, it doesn't seem like Preston was a part of some civilian program like the Explorers or anything like that. What we know is that Preston was a mechanic who wanted to try his hand at law enforcement because he was drawn to the idea of helping. So I think the ride-along was like a little peek behind the curtain to see what it's really like. Try before you buy kind of thing. Now, in my experience, you kind of got to know someone to get to do a ride-along, or like know someone who knows someone.
Yeah, have a connection.
Right, or maybe you just call up the sheriff's office and they let you. According to a sheriff's office representative, there is no written policy on ride-alongs. But quote, if a deputy chooses to allow a rider, it has to be cleared through the supervisor. So there's nothing formal about like what that actually.
There's like no process
Yeah.
for it.
So I don't know how Preston ended up on that ride-along that night, or if he knew any of the deputies on the force before that. But if the goal was to see some action, he got it, right? Like in that first body cam footage, you can hear Preston. Like right after that last clip that I just played where Bynum says, "I got it." Preston sounds excited when he's asked if he's good.
Step real thin. You good? I know it's big old hair going on. You sure you're good? Huh? You sure you're good? Yeah.
Preston says he was finally thinking about going into law enforcement at 12:45 a.m. on November 3rd. At 12:50 a.m., as Bynum is walking around his truck looking at the damage, Preston asks Bynum something in a hushed tone. You on camera?
Huh? Yeah, I'm okay.
And then Preston, you can just catch a glimpse of him on the side of the frame. He proceeds to mouth something to Bynum that for the life of me, I cannot make out. I have watched this video 100 times at this point at every rate of speed. I sped it up, I slowed it down. I cannot tell what it is. After that, they exchange a few more words about the damage.
This stuff road pretty messed up. Got quite a mess. What is this in this one? Betty had two. Oh, I don't think I had one. Did it? Yeah.
And that is where the video cuts off at 12:51 a.m. And whatever happened after that first body cam video cut out seems to have changed Preston's mind about going into law enforcement. Because according to the family's PI, Cody, shortly after this incident, Preston moved out of the area and decided not to pursue a criminal justice. Again, Preston wouldn't talk to us, but Cody was able to talk to him once. And Preston told Cody that he was no longer interested in law enforcement because, quote, it's not worth it. Is it not worth it? Because you just saw a couple of deputies out there doing a stand-up job, and even though they did nothing wrong, community members are suggesting some kind of cover-up. Not worth it. I don't think that's it. Because in order for that to be the case, there's that whole, you have to be doing a stand-up job, doing all the right things, right? When Cody asked Preston straight up about the allegations that the public had been making, Preston said, quote, I hate that it ended that way. I really do. But I couldn't have done anything in my power to change what happened without getting Mr. Bynum in trouble.
What does that mean?
He didn't explain it. He just said, I'm a ride-along, and at the end of the day, that's it. Also, I don't know what to make of this, but when Cody interviewed Preston for his investigation, Preston said that while his and Bynum's interviews with the state police were the same day, Kinney was brought in the day before. But it's weird because all of the ASP reports and interview logs put the interviews happening on the same morning. I mean, he sounds completely certain of it, which just makes me wonder if there was a pre-interview, like some kind of interview with Kinney the day prior to the documented interviews that for some reason wasn't recorded. I do not think that's it because you can literally hear SSA Matt saying the date and time in the audio. So unless he's lying too, like, I don't know. It's just another thing I can't explain. I don't know what happened in the early morning hours of November 4th. The more our team looked into Tripp's case, the less the official story added up. Yes, a message came from Tripp's phone that some read as a suicide note. But when it with the four-wheeler. Remember, he turns his camera back on at 1:40. And at exactly 1:41.24, Kenny comes on screen. He's standing on the other side of the four-wheeler as they're trying to get it on the trailer. So, just going off this body cam footage, I think it would be easy to say that they couldn't have sent the text message. You see them on camera at the exact time. So to be fair, like, I don't have eyes on Preston that whole time. I mean, I know he's there. I can for sure see him on camera right after they get the four-wheeler onto the trailer. But, you know, something was bothering me. Like, and it's what we keep talking about. Like, it was itching my brain as I was, like, dissecting this video over and over. Why turn it back on? Yeah. I think this whole thing is more explainable if you just left the camera on. Yes, based on their own policy, you know, they have the right to decide when the event is over. If it's over, it's over. Why turn it back on? I turned it back on at 1:40, and only for a couple of minutes, by the way. And how convenient that it is the exact time that Tripp's phone sends that message. He's itching at it, right? Like, I was playing it over and over, looking at, like, every move, every second. And I can't even explain how it hit me. But this thought came to me. This is early November. I open Google. I start typing. When was daylight savings? So, in November 2024. It was November freaking 3rd, 2024. On this night,
It was 1:40 twice.
that means that
The missing 49 minutes
could actually be an hour and 49 minutes.
Right, because at 2 a.m., it goes back to 1 a.m. for like fall back.
So it's possible, not definitive, but possible, that Tripp's phone sent that at 1:41, and then when 2 o'clock hits,
20 minutes, 19 minutes later,
it goes back to 1. So was the body cam footage at 1:40 actually like 2:40 if it wouldn't have been daylight savings? Now, we went right to Jennifer to try and, like, pin this down. She said she didn't even realize that the time changed that night. Like, she was so caught up in looking for her son.
she had a lot going on.
Yeah, the thing is, she's like, she didn't even pin down. She's like, I don't know if it would have changed before we ever even left the house or, like, as we are out in the woods.
She doesn't know which 1:40 it was.
If it was after, though, like, as they're in the woods, like, that actually makes so much sense to me because one thing that was really throwing me was how Tripp's dad was saying, like, they were out there alone.
There was no one
Yeah, for a long time, right? Yeah, but because when I look at the activity logs from the sheriff's office, it seems like, I don't know, maybe an hour, maybe even less. So, you know, was that just because it felt like forever because your son is missing and you're looking by yourself? Were the logs wrong? Or, like, is it like there's like this weird hour that's like not real or accounted for?
Yeah.
Now, there is one log from dispatch that shows time out of order, like it reset for daylight savings. So listen, it's very possible that everything is on the up and up, and this is just another one of the craziest coincidences of all time.
Okay, but how many of those do you get in one case?
A few more, because I was about to say that one of the things we so desperately wanted to get our hands on to help, like, sort this out was the actual dispatch calls from that day. But in another 1 in a million chance, in a documented letter from the sheriff's office, they told Jennifer that they couldn't give her the audio or, like, those calls because their hard drive that, like, they kept all that on was struck by lightning. So the logs from that night were burned up and they just don't have them anymore.
You're kidding me.
Where do they keep this hard drive? Like, on the top of a flagpole? Like, it makes no sense to me. And by the way, there is one more thing that could maybe sort all of this out. And that is Tripp's phone. And this is where I actually have good news. His family has the phone. It has been in the PI's possession in a Faraday bag because they know that its contents are important. They want to get it forensically analyzed. We actually asked Cody if we could help facilitate that. And he assured us that he has someone working on it and that the data should come back as soon as this month. And that data should tell us a lot. if not everything. Like what time calls or texts were sent is in a universal time code. So we can see it irrespective of daylight savings. Right. And it should be able to show us a clear path of how Tripp's phone moved forward. This might be the definitive thing to help his family understand there really is something shady going on here. Those who knew Tripp say that they never saw this coming. They can't possibly understand what about that night would have triggered something like this, or something like what the sheriff's office is saying. And it's not just his mom and dad who were struck by this. The day after Tripp's death, when the NP at their family doctor heard about this, she was so taken aback that she actually reached out to Jennifer and Gil and ultimately wrote a letter for them to show anyone who had questions about Tripp's death. And this is actually her reading the letter for us.
To whom it may concern, Tripp Brazil was last seen in our clinic on October 9th, 2024, for acute medical issues by me. During that visit, I questioned him about life in general. He seemed pleasant, happy, and I had no concerns of any mental health issues. I had no concerns at all about him having suicidal thoughts or ideations. He was very excited about his current job and life in general. He was a typical teenage boy. I also see other family members and have never had any concerns about his home life or his well-being prior to his death. I am a family nurse practitioner and have no training in forensic pathology. There are some concerns in his autopsy report, but I am not in a position to offer input to the cause of his death. However, I was very surprised by his death by alleged suicide based on my previous visits with him.
The missing pieces in this case tell a story of their own. The lack of probable cause for pursuit. Tripp's last call to his parents asking to be picked up is uncut. The mysterious anonymous call IDing Tripp as an ATV rider. The gap in body cam footage. The latex gloves, just to name a few. Cody and Jennifer and Gil, even Sandra, they all believe Tripp was met with foul play in the woods. If that's true, who would he have encountered? Anyone could have theoretically been in those woods. And I want to be clear that we're not accusing anyone. What I know is that two deputies were around the woods. And I also know that both of them have a history of misconduct. In 2023, Bynum was formally disciplined by the Forest City Police Department for insubordination and neglect of duty. This is before Tripp's case. According to the records, he repeatedly ignored direct orders, failing to respond to messages from supervisors, skipping required administrative tasks, and refusing to follow instructions during his shift. Supervisors described him as argumentative and defiant. And according to his disciplinary records, which we have, at one point, Bynum pushed back by saying, quote, "You are not going to talk to me any kind of way. I am a grown man." Which sounds like the least grown man would say. It's almost like my teenage son would say. As for Kenny, he was terminated from the Lee County Sheriff's Department in 2021 after repeated complaints about his behavior. Internal records describe ongoing insubordination, yelling at his superiors, and outright refusal to follow orders, even after multiple warnings. But it doesn't stop there. Citizens also came forward accusing Kinney of speaking openly about calls that he responded to, and even making inappropriate comments about involved parties. Officials said that his behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it reflected poorly on the entire department, and they decided they couldn't keep him on any longer. So he just went to work for the St. Francis County Sheriff's Office.
Did they know all of this when they hired him?
I mean, it's all right there in the employment file.
And they're both still with that department today.
Well, as of this recording, Kenny is. But according to Cody and Gail, Bynum now works for the Marion Police Department. Or at least he did while we were reporting on this case. That actually changed as of very recently. I don't know what happened in the universe, but Tripp's case started picking up some real internet steam. Facebook posts made about Tripp from like months ago went viral recently, and the community reaction elicited a pretty strong response from the city of Marion, who put out this press release on March 18th, 2026. I'm going to have you read it.
The city of Marion and the Marion Police Department understand the strong emotions surrounding the tragic death of Tripp Brazil. Nothing about the situation diminishes the grief his family has experienced or the community's desire for answers. On May 12, Mayor Tracy Brick received a formal citizen request asking the city to review the hiring and continued employment of Officer Trey Bynum with the Marion Police Department. That same day, the Police and Fire Committee began a review of Officer Bynum's hiring process, prior employment history, and related records. The committee also met with representatives of Brazil Family's private investigative team as part of that review. Officer Bynum was not employed by the Marion Police Department at the time of the 2024 incident involving Tripp Brazil. To date, no state investigative agency has filed criminal charges or concluded that Officer Bynum committed misconduct related to Tripp Brazil's death. During the review, the city identified that a prior law enforcement agency had not been included on Officer Bynum's original employment application submitted to the Marion Police Department. Although Officer Bynum later discussed the prior employment and related disciplinary history with the department, the admission resulted in the department not obtaining and reviewing the complete employment documentation at the time of hire. After careful consideration of all information reviewed, the city has determined that continued employment with the Marion Police Department is no longer in the best interest of the department, the city, or the community moving forward. This decision should not be interpreted as a finding of wrongdoing related to the death of Tripp Brazil. Rather, it reflects the city's responsibility to maintain integrity and public confidence in the law enforcement hiring process while acting in the best interest of the department and the community moving forward.
Crime Junkies, I hate to interrupt this broadcast, but something just happened I need to tell you about. You are not going to believe this. You just heard Britt read a statement from the city of Marion saying that Trey Bynum was no longer employed by the Marion Police Department. It's true. It turns out he just got employed again. Not by Marion PD. According to a Facebook post from the Forest City Times-Herald, he has been rehired the St. Francis County Sheriff's Office. Post says, quote, St. Francis County Sheriff Bobby May confirmed to the Times-Herald Trey Bynum has been rehired as a deputy with the department. They said Bynum, certified law enforcement officer, was hired on Tuesday, is scheduled to begin work Thursday, June 11th. They called Bynum good officer and said he looks forward to working with him again. That means Bynum is expected to be back with the same department where all of this started. See, I don't know what that means for this case moving forward. So we are going to keep following this, and we'll try and update you as we learn more. Make sure to follow us on social. Sign up for our newsletter on the Crime Junkie website. Now, this doesn't change the rest of the episode, and there is still more to come. I'm going to send you back to past Ashley and Brett. Now, Jennifer, Gil, Cody, they don't have any vendettas with police. Cody even told us that when he first heard the official details of his case, but like before he took it on, he was fully prepared to have to tell the Brazils that their son took his own life. And once he started going through the materials, the gaps and the red flags caught even him by surprise. Him, a former military, former EMT, former CID detective. And Gil, he was in law enforcement for 14 years before taking over his family business. In fact, it is precisely because of Gil's law enforcement experience that he has so many questions about his son's case. He told us that he specifically worked hanging cases before, and what he is saying is just not adding up. Plus, he says that many of the officers involved in his son's case, I told you, like, he worked with them, he trained some of them, they were his friends, which, like, made their handling of his son's death all the more frustrating.
Yeah, but they aren't trying to help him from the inside now?
No, not only not trying to help them, he doesn't even speak to them anymore. And Gil is actually running for St. Francis County Sheriff now because of everything. And by the way, Cody isn't just sitting around frustrated with the system either. He's running for sheriff too in Lawrence County. We need more good people at the helm, protecting the community, not protecting their own. Remember, guys, election day is November 3rd, 2026. And again, there is a chance that all of these red flags are really red herrings. But if they're not, then Tripp's family has gone too long without justice. They're still grieving. They even considered filing a wrongful death suit, but they want to make sure that they have all their ducks in a row. So Jennifer is still toiling, still trying to get Tripp's clothing and the ratchet strap and more employment records. She says she knows something more happened to her son out there, and she won't stop until she gets the answers she deserves. Now, when we asked Jennifer how we could use our platform to help her, she said that she just wants people to understand the power of the Freedom of Information Act and how to use it. All they had when their son first died was just this gut feeling that something wasn't right. Jennifer had to get all of the records to be able to point to exactly what it was that made him feel that way. And even though Gil used to work in law enforcement, Jennifer said she had no idea how to go about getting this stuff. Like, she'd never filed a FOIA in her life. So she had to ask friends. She was like Googling her way through this stuff. And she doesn't want any other parent or sibling or loved one to have to figure it out all on their own like she did. Like, in the middle of the worst time of your life, right? So we actually created a FOIA guide on our website inspired by this case to help crime junkies feel confident making their own requests. No one ever expects to live a case like this, but it does happen. And when it does, it can be so overwhelming to even get your bearings. So we're going to slowly start building out our resources for families and for law enforcement. And this is our very first step towards that. I'm going to link directly to our guide on how to submit a FOIA in the show notes. And hopefully I'll be able to come back with an update on this case soon. Until then, if any of our listeners have information to share, email our tip line, tips@audiochuck.com. You can find all the source material on our website.
With Virgo Care, help is always ready, before, during, and after your stay. We plan for the plot twist, so support is always available. Because a great trip starts with peace of mind.
Even if you're using prescription creams for your eczema, you still may be hearing this. That relentless itching that makes you want to scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch. When your moderate to severe eczema isn't well controlled, it's time to ask about Dupixent, dupilumab. Dupixent helps block a key source of inflammation inside the body that can cause eczema, helping adults stay ahead of it with clearer skin and less itch. Severe allergic reactions, including skin reactions, can occur. Get help right away for face, mouth, tongue, or throat swelling, wheezing, or trouble breathing. Tell your doctor right away of new or worsening eye problems like eye pain or vision changes, skin symptoms, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop other treatments without talking to your doctor. Dupixent helps you feel the heal. See the difference for yourself. Talk to your eczema specialist, visit Dupixent.com, or call 1-844-DUPIXENT. In a world increasingly dominated by touchscreens, let's not forget the many different meanings of human touch. Even if you're an adult with moderate to severe eczema that isn't well controlled with topical prescription therapies, Dupixent, dupilumab, helps heal your skin from within so you can get ahead of your eczema. It helps block a key source of inflammation inside the body that can cause eczema for clearer skin and less itch as you welcome the feeling of touch. Severe allergic reactions, including skin reactions, can occur. Get help right away for face, mouth, tongue, or throat swelling, wheezing, or trouble breathing. Tell your doctor right away of new or worsening eye problems like eye pain or vision changes, skin symptoms, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop other treatments without talking to your doctor. Dupixent helps you feel the heal. See the difference for yourself. Talk to your eczema specialist, visit Dupixent.com, or call 1-844-DUPIXENT.
Crime Junkies, I'm your host, Ashley Flowers, and today I'll be taking you on a trek through the mountains of Montana. A little-known serial killer went undetected for years despite his race and crimes that he likely would have gotten away with had not been surprising investigative combo, mother's unrelenting determination for answers, and a brand new thing that the FBI was developing. Well, something that you might be very familiar with now, but at the time, no one had heard of criminal profiling. It's still in its infancy at the time, but this would be one of the very first cases where the FBI, they're learning to work, catch a serial killer. They did. It's summer 1973, and 12-year-old Heidi Sager wakes up to a breeze on the back of her head. She might have had this brief, hazy moment where she embraces the Montana mountain air, but then she realizes that's all wrong. Yes, she's outside, she's camping with her family, but she's inside a tent. There shouldn't be a breeze. When she opens her eyes, it is pitch black, so she starts to feel around, and her hand actually touches grass. When her eyes finally adjust to the darkness, she notices there is this gaping slice through the back of her tent. And her little sister Susie, who had been sleeping right next to her, is gone. Now, Heidi doesn't hesitate. She runs to wake up her parents in their nearby camper. Bill and Marietta Yeager hurry out with flashlights, hoping to see 7-year-old Susie wandering their campsite somewhere, maybe using the restroom. But what they find causes even more panic. Susie's stuffed animals that she'd been sleeping with are in the grass outside the back of the tent, near where the hole was. Now, they figure that she couldn't have been gone very long. It's just after 5 a.m. now, and Heidi tells them that she last laid eyes on her sister at 1:30 a.m. They both woken up, chatted for a little bit before then falling back asleep. Did something wake up? Not that she remembers, but it's something that I've wondered about because their parents had put them to bed earlier before going to their camper to sleep. So I know that they were asleep earlier. But it seems unlikely because it wasn't just Susie and Heidi.
Don't run it down. Just don't run what you run for, dog. Just some of that, just some of that. But it's shut the fuck up, man. Some of that, but I'll stretch that nigga out. Stretch that nigga out. I'll stretch that nigga out. I'll stretch that nigga out. I'll stretch that butthole out. I'll open you up. Nigga, stop playing with me. How to get over there and knock something. Play with me. Play with me. How to get off. How to get off. And dude, salute, I'm a salute in your butthole, my nigga. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna salute to your butthole, dog. I don't care about that. Yeah, let me get some of that butt. Yeah, I'm about to condone your butthole in the bitch. Let me get some of that butt. That's what I'm about to do. I'm about to condone some butt shit. I like you, nigga. I like you, nigga. Let me get some of that butthole, dog. Yeah, it don't even matter, dog. It don't even matter, dog. Let me get some of that butt. Nah, they gonna have to get me out of you, dog. They gonna have to get me out of you, dog. They gonna have to get me out of you. I'm gonna get all how that song go? How that song go? I'm talking about Andy. I'm talking about Andy. Wow, nigga, don't run. What you like? I don't go fuck with you like me. I like you, man. Give me some of that. That, um, and that, um, and that, I'm gonna spit that butthole though one day, dog. I'm gonna get you, dog. One day I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you one day, dog. I'm gonna get you one day. Mm, mm, mm. What's going on? Hey, big shot. Give me some of that butt. Give me some of that. Give me some. What's up? Come on, give me big shot. Come on, come on. Look at me. Come on, look at me like big shot. What he begging for? Come on, don't fuck with big shot. Come on, big shot gonna get this dick out. Big shot gonna get some big shot. Delete it. Can't delete it. Clearly has already been ran through. His name says it all. Somebody has destroyed that boy. I will stretch both of you niggas out. I don't care. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I'm sorry. He'll, he'll lose it, but no. I mean, I ain't worried about that. It's just that it's totally different. I really didn't want to. So, yeah, I got a heart. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, but the whole tone is different, like I said. So I'm good. Let me get some of that butt. Let me get some of that butt. Let me go. I said I'm gonna stretch his butthole out. I'm gonna stretch his butthole out. Yeah, I'm gonna stretch that butthole out. I'm gonna stretch that butthole out. Oh, you Oh, and let me stretch that butthole out. And let me stretch your butthole out. Let me stretch your butthole out. Let me stretch that butthole out. I'm trying to stretch that butthole out. Let me stretch that butthole. Let me stretch that butthole. Let me stretch that butthole.
in the tent. Two of their brothers were actually in there too. You see, the Yeager family had an order about their campsite. So for this month-long excursion that they were on from their home in Michigan to Montana, the four youngest kids slept in the tent. Their oldest son, Dan, had a sleeping set up in the family van. Parents, Bill and Marietta, have their own camper. And even the grandparents, Marietta's parents, who were on this trip, they also have their own sleeping quarters. And no one else reported hearing anything strange in the night. They all stayed asleep until the family started waking them up one by one to help search for Susie. In the book, The Lost Child, which was written by Susie's mom, Marietta, she describes the moment that she saw Susie's stuffed animals on the ground and the hole in the tent. But I'm actually just going to have you read from the sentence so people can hear directly from her.
As I stumbled around the campground searching, I was gripped by a terrible sense of separation, panic, and hopelessness in my inability to see. I remember looking up at the black night sky and begging God to send the sun. The darkness was unbearably frustrating.
And in that moment, like desperate for a logical explanation, Marietta and Bill are asking Heidi if there was anything inside the tent that Susie could have used to cut the hole herself, but of course there wasn't. Right away, Marietta knows in her heart of hearts that someone has her daughter. She just hopes that they haven't gotten too far. Using flashlights, they all start searching for Susie around the campground, even waking neighboring campers. There is no sign of Susie. So Susie's dad and grandpa drive to the closest town to alert police. The Gallatin County Sheriff's Office and FBI Special Agent Pete Dunbar out of the nearby Bozeman, Montana office rush to the campground. And right away, they see what Marietta sees. They search every car and building and question all the campers. A volunteer search party forms to help look for Susie. And as the crowd of helpful people begins to grow, the Yeager family overhears something that must have made them even more worried for their little girl. One of the volunteers is talking to another one about the other child that was attacked at that very campground while asleep in his tent just a few years prior. So Marietta goes right to law enforcement and asks them about this. What are they talking about? And they confirm this is true. 5 years before, in May of 1968, 12-year-old Michael Rainey was down in his tent at that same state park. He'd been on a Boy Scout trip and was sleeping right next to another kid. That case was never solved. And now, this seems like way more than just a coincidence that Susie went missing from the same place. So finding her might mean actually solving two cases and preventing more, which makes the stakes all that much higher. When the light of day begins slowly creeping in, the sun reveals one more clue. Where Susie's stuffed animals had been, they can barely make out a front path in the dew of the grass leading away from the tent toward the parking area. There's also a rock with reddish-brown stains. This is by no means comforting to anyone, and this ramps up the urgency of the search. The FBI sets up a command center at the campground. Authorities start working on a bolo for Susie, and they rush Susie's sleeping bag, her stuffed animals, the rock, that cut part of the tent, all to their lab for testing. And they also widen the search area to include rivers, the local dump, and the nearby towns of Three Forks and Manhattan, Montana, where they start going door to door. And all of those efforts do result in some suspect names being tossed around, mostly local oddballs. And any of them who didn't have a solid alibi for the early morning hours of June 25th were brought in for questioning and polygraphs. They even dispatched police to the Yeager's home in Michigan to check their house and mail to see if anyone made any threats. And they go door to door there to find out if any neighbors had any information about Susie or somebody who could be a threat to her. But no matter how much or where they search over the next several days, nothing is found. And mind you, this case is getting some real headlines around Montana. And Marietta is giving local reporters interviews in case it could help, thinking that someone out there had to know something. Her desperate pleas just had to reach the right person. It takes 5 full days before the first big development comes in. And strangely, it comes to the Denver field office of the FBI.
That's Denver, Colorado.
Yeah. They get a call at 7 p.m. on June 30th from a man who says that he is Susie's kidnapper. And he says, tell someone the ransom is $25,000. But he hung up without getting any more information. Where should they take the money? When?
Yeah.
No one knew if this was a hoax or if they should be expecting another call. The phone didn't ring again until July 2nd. This time, not in a Denver field office, not actually in any office at all. The phone rang at the home of Gallatin County Deputy Ron Brown. The thing is, Ron Brown isn't home. Even though it's 11:16 p.m., he's still out helping with Susie's search. So his wife, Jane, answers. And the man says to her, the Denver FBI must think I'm a crank. I'm raising the ransom to $50,000. And this time he gives real instructions. He demands that the ransom be put in a suitcase in small bills and placed in the end stall of the men's restroom at the Denver bus stop.
Denver, Colorado connection.
Go back to Denver, yeah. And this time, it feels legit because he says that he can prove he has Susie by telling them something about her that a random stranger wouldn't know. He says that Susie's fingernails, like on her index fingers of each hand, are home-colored, like slightly deformed. And this is true of Susie. And it's also true that a stranger wouldn't know that. I mean, it wasn't put on any of the press bulletins about this case. Actually, Marietta writes in her book that in the chaos and fear after Susie first disappeared, they were like giving her a description to the authorities and stuff, but they had like totally forgotten this detail about her. Like it was barely noticeable, and Susie was born with it. So like, again, literally, she's born with it, and they never thought about it anymore. So this caller, this is either someone who knows Susie, knows the family, and would play some kind of, like, not some kind, the cruelest hoax on them, which seems absolutely out of the realm of possibility. Or this is really the man who kidnapped her. So once authorities are made aware of this call, they send an urgent teletype to the Denver field office to get someone to the bus depot to do surveillance. They also launch a plan to get some dummy bills together to fill a suitcase because the Jaegers don't just have $50,000 in cash laying around. And they also put a tap on Deputy Brown's phone in case the kidnapper calls back. But whoever was that called never comes to the bus depot, never picks up the cash, or I don't know if they saw the police or what, but like that pickup never happened.
Never materialized.
No. And in the time that the sheriff's office is waiting, another crime in the area happens. And actually, it's one that I've already covered on my other show, The Death. 20-year-old nurse Donna Lemon goes missing after last being seen buying a can of beer at a bar in Gallatin Gateway on July 5th, 1973. So this is just 10 days after Susie and 30 miles south of Headwater State Park. Now, her case ends up seeing slightly more resolution than Susie's because within 4 days, they end up finding Donna's body on the banks of the Snake River down in Idaho. And I say all that to say, like, while this may pull on some resources, take away from Susie's case, that investigation happens, like, much smaller. It's much quieter as it plays out. And honestly, the most distracting part for police at the time is, like, they start getting tips from locals suggesting that maybe Susie's case and Donna's case are somehow connected, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to officials. Like, the circumstances, the victims themselves, everything about the two cases felt very different. And none of the tips had anything concrete to point to. They were all just basically saying, like, this is a really weird coincidence. Like, in such a small place, having two cases like this back to back, how could they not be connected? Right. But the investigators aren't bringing the cases together. They have a kidnapping right now, and all of their effort is going into locating Susie, hopefully alive. And the Jaeger family is doing anything they can to support. In order to feel like they're doing something helpful, they start fundraising for actual cash should the kidnapper call back and want to follow through.
My balls. So I've been sitting here for him. All I gotta do is that. Please stop saying stupid shit. Please stop that. I don't really do shit about it. Not my problem. It sound like a personal problem. Please stop talking to me. Shut your bitch ass up. Your bitch ass. Your bitch ass. Your bitch ass.
The ransom demands. They also make calls and organize a reward fund for information. Like the 1970s version of GoFundMe, and Marietta writes in her book that they major donation from an anonymous person that actually raised $50,000. So they are quickly ready for a call.
Fredo has a demo out. This is right up my alley, dedicated also one. So you already know long by now, I'm a fighting game fan. I love me some good fighting games. I have several videos across my channel over the last couple of years showcasing some of them ranging from Street Fighter to Guilty Gear to 2XKO. The thing I want to do for anyone who's intimidated by this is showcase that the control scheme can be played with the traditional motion controls that fighting game players are very used to, or simple control. Or 2XKO, even though I've done what's wrong with the normal run. So I've done the fear at this point in time. Let's go take a look at this. So let's look through it. I believe, oh my god, she is in there too. She's not done one much, oh my god. She's also spamming the set from one much. Man, I need you to chill for a second. She's stop now. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to go slow for a second. Go slow for a second. Just she's going to be she's going to be snapping this on stage. Challenge you to super right here. Figure out what you get around. So something that maybe some of you are aware of. I don't know how many of you are aware of, but the fighting game was out there. If you're familiar with Footsies. Footsies was another game that was really good at training. That's where you have like an archetype of an enemy and you deal with it. So in 2 rounds, you can see 2 health lives up there. The enemy's life bar. Take down 2 rounds, you win, but you also have like your rounds are live. So if you lose too many throughout the one, you die for good. That's it. If you land a first strike hit, mega crit, so you actually win this. After we finish winning a game, we get to choose new upgrades for our abilities, all new ones in general. This is my current move list. So I have a command ball, I have a high ground, just kick up that we have our here and then we have all if those are goes to projectiles, we also have this really good super. I like to look at this super. I like me a good melee super. It has 25% more damage. It's a higher level, so they don't have range, they don't have properties, so this has drawbacks. You can see this one more bounces, and this one more bounces. I'm going to take the new super if anything. They chain into each other, crouching into aerial moves, so that would literally just be triangle, square, triangle, circle, and then X on PlayStation control. We'll just convert that for Xbox or whatever control you're doing. This will teach you a little bit about how to stay safe too. So, for example, if I finish the combo, if I flip up, it's going to. Let's just replace Ice Spike with Ice Spike Arrow. Okay, wow. New enemy, Arrow. It's about the same speed. You should have shown that. I don't know why I'm jumping into the line. I feel like this. Is that how low the is? Mysterious stranger, no identity. In a quiet village, a photograph emerged that would quickly become the centre of speculation and mystery. According to the individual who captured the image, the encounter unfolded in an abandoned house which stood empty for many years. The witness was reluctant to reveal the exact location, fearing that doing so would expose their identity. Despite withholding certain details, they felt compelled to share the image because of the strange figure that appeared before them. The witness stated that they noticed a solitary man standing in the garden of the promised land. At first glance, the figure appeared ordinary enough, but the longer they observed him, the more unusual it seemed. The man was dressed in formal clothing that looked decades out of date. His dark suit, tie, and overall appearance reminded the witness of styles commonly associated with the 1930s or 1940s. In a modern rural setting, the sight of such a attire immediately stood out. What unsettled the witness most, however, was the man's appearance. His complexion was described as unusual, almost unnatural, giving him striking presence. The figure reportedly stood motionless for several minutes, staring ahead without speaking or interacting with anyone. There was something about his stillness that the witness found it difficult to explain. Determined to learn more, the witness later asked neighbors whether they had seen the mysterious visitor. Surprisingly, nobody else reported seeing it. This only deepened the mystery surrounding the encounter. The most extraordinary aspect of the sighting came when the witness claimed that the figure suddenly vanished from view without any obvious explanation. As the photograph spread online, theories quickly followed. Some believed the image showed a mysterious traveller whose appearance seemed disconnected from the world. Others suggested the figure could represent something far stranger. With no confirmed identity, no additional witnesses, and no clear explanation for the sudden disappearance, the silent man in the dark suit creates a mystery. The mysterious Dalton Highway image. The remote wilderness of Alaska has long been associated with stories of unexplained creatures and mysterious encounters. With vast forests, rugged mountains, and enormous stretches of land that remain largely untouched, it is a region where unusual sightings continue to capture the imagination of locals and travelers alike. One particularly intriguing photograph reportedly taken along Alaska's Dalton Highway has become the focus of intense discussion among Bigfoot researchers and enthusiasts. According to the truck driver who captured the image, the photograph was taken while traveling through one of the most isolated areas of the state. As he looked toward the rocky hillside, he noticed what appeared to be a large, dark, humanoid figure standing behind the trees. The figure seemed noticeably larger than the ordinary person and appeared to be partially concealed by the surrounding terrain. What immediately caught the driver's attention was the unusual shape visible within the creature's eyes. After reviewing the photograph, he became convinced that the larger figure was carrying a smaller humanoid form. Believing the image showed something extraordinary, he shared the photograph with online communities dedicated to investigating reports of Sasquatch encounters. The image quickly generated widespread interest. Many members of these groups carefully examined the photograph and reported seeing what appeared to be the outline of a juvenile Sasquatch being carried by the larger figure. To them, the image suggested a rare glimpse into a side of the phenomenon that is not often reported. While sightings of large
following a sperm whale down into the abyss means witnessing the familiar world gradually vanish. First, the sunlight fades away, giving way to the pitch-black darkness of the deep ocean. The temperature drops sharply while the pressure begins to escalate, to the point where the sound of the heartbeat can echo in your ears like a countdown clock. In that deep space, among the planet's most bizarre creatures, the sperm whale is no longer the still giant floating. This creature undergoes a complete transformation to survive under the weight of billions of tons of water. This raises a big question about the internal mechanism. As they dive deeper, why does the planet's largest predator become so terrifying? The sperm whale's journey down to a depth of over 2,000 meters, 6,561 feet, is a physics problem of survival in an environment where pressure reaches a threshold of over 200 atm. Here, every square inch of the body surface must bear a load equivalent to a heavy-duty truck, a pressure powerful enough to deform the most solid steel structures. Instead of evolving into a rigid frame to resist this pressure, the sperm whale has chosen an absolute effective tactic, actively allowing its body to collapse according to the environmental pressure. This mechanical collapse begins with the flexible structure of the ribcage system. Unlike the fixed chest frames of most mammals, the sperm whale's ribs possess cartilage joints capable of expanding and folding quickly. When water pressure increases, the creature's chest does not resist but automatically flattens, a phenomenon known as active thoracic collapse.
mechanism helps reduce body volume, eliminates empty cavities, and prevents bone fractures caused by extreme physical stress. The flexible deformation of the skeletal frame is a mandatory prerequisite for eliminating air pockets in the lungs. Gas is highly compressible, while soft tissue and liquid are virtually incompressible. This difference is the exact cause of explosions in gas-containing structures at great depths. To handle this, the sperm whale operates a mechanism that completely flattens the lungs, pushing all remaining gas into thick-walled bronchioles where gas exchange is halted. The removal of air from the lungs is not a defect, but it
The most hostile place on the planet doesn't destroy life.
all of this happening. Oh my gosh. Now, before we get into this, I want you to first question the topics. I'm going to put this to you. All you look into it is on Free Fire to discover this in the description. I just had to see if this was absolutely possible for myself. I wanted to do it. I was deciding to pass it. Here's how it works. All of this is that stack to be used consecutively, going out drains a massive amount of stamina. This is a specific mod for infinite stamina, which I've linked below. You can essentially ladder your way into the clouds. I suspect the ability to be after this, so I don't actually experience school for science. You need the mod. The plan is simple. Reach the thermal sphere. That's roughly 80 kilometers up. I consider the exosphere as 700 kilometers, but I like to finish this video in my lifetime, so 80 kilometers. Every stab being around 15 meters of altitude. If you do the math, that's around 5,380 stabs to reach the target. I thought the hardest part would be the physical toll of spamming the same buttons until my forearms went numb. I was wrong. The real challenge was navigation. If you look at the map, click isn't going straight up at a magnitude angle. He's oscillating. I was constantly drifting between the free zone and the pushing region. If I didn't micromanage my position, didn't put mental damage, which methods, as well as giving balance facts, playing steps, while staring at my coordinates. So the big question is, was it worth it?
Yes, I just want to ask you a quick question. Just anchor. Do you have a horse ethos just to get away for David or Matthew Johnson? David. I was making sure that it's been there for a while. Do y'all remix it if it's too cold? Y'all keep it warm? I guess it's just no problem. I mean, it feels like y'all can cancel it then? I've been waiting for a minute. I don't.
How is it people not canceling it? On what? Or at least you don't have to go back on there and cancel it.
It's not simple. I want to get the because I need to still see this happen. I have felt like shit.
Television crew demonstrated what the gas on rather than first instinct to crime, the camera seems to be on the body. Still rising from the China reports steps into frame. The certain takes the victims made to spread fire after the gas police have yet to arrive and field forensic team has examined the body. His team crew is here before anyone else. Cold Street crew is working on the street popular true crime group. Past every crime encounter, always in place. Up until now, it was just a job. That wasn't because of the crimes. About the violent crimes. Before they happened, what if the true crime creator himself had been secretly orchestrating the killings this whole time? Even years after this case was officially closed, it was not fully done. It's a big conspiracy that play and the FBI. Let's get into it. Today's topic was suggested to us by one of our viewers, Claude the Third, who is hopefully watching right now. If you are Claude, thank you for taking the time to see the story. You were right with me. This is crazy. If you have a video topic you'd like to see us cover next, then go to newsongs.com. And before we get into today's story, we want to thank this video sponsor for great shout out. It's because of sponsors like them that we're able to give you quality content. Speaking of quality content, one of the worst recently ended the second
this,
Plus, you've got some great promo codes for more champions and even brews and games. If you can use one of these promo codes on screen, you can't go wrong with any of these. Personally, my favorite is part of the and it's popular. The best legendary game. This guy has been total catch. You accelerate your allies and call them to strike as well. Attackers and target for defenders and call it. It's important to do well tactically. Basically, you make your whole team better every single time. And turn players against good higher, you keep it 500. I personally like higher because 10 export. So don't forget to below 10 where you get that word rate and lots of games so that we all be legendary. Then we'll also do this. Into that climate of rising violence, that smallest soldier, the founder of the West, and elsewhere, a show that was truly one of a kind. Despite the heavy subject matter, finale was theatrical, flashing lights, loud music, the dance choreography filled the studio between segments covering real violent crimes. The live audience reacted in real time. The program even had its own cast of characters. There was an ominous announcer who was on touch. Criminals and occasionally clashed with a member of the show known as Dallas Vita. Their on-air feud sometimes became so reputable that it turned into a strong movie. One of the most still possible, Dallas Vita was so furious that he tried to kick the puppet through its small window on set. Two members rushed in to hold him back as he lunged and kicked the puppet. The chaos escalated when he went behind the scenes to find the puppeteer, who ran from out the window with Jill following him. Several people jumped into a strange to the ground as laughter could be heard in the background. If you stumbled across this broadcast halfway through, you might have wondered what exactly you were watching. Sideshow entertainment or investigative journalism documenting violence unfolding across the city, but then Wallace Sosa would appear on the screen. He addressed the camera directly. His tone sharpened as he spoke about the bloodshed overtaking the house. He named alleged trafficker who probably found out about the program, a TV program unlike any other. It was the highest-rated crime show in Amazonas, Brazil's largest state. Airing daily at lunchtime, Canal Libre dispatched its crews across the city of Manaus to cover violent crimes. Manaus sits deeply inside the Amazon rainforest, connected to the rest of Brazil largely by rivers and air routes. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, shifting drug trafficking routes had made the region increasingly important for the cocaine trade. Cocaine produced in Peru and Colombia was moving through the western Amazon, using vast river systems like the Solimões and Amazon as natural transport corridors. With both a major seaport and an international airport, Manaus became a key point along those routes. And as this illicit traffic increased, so did the violence. Small street gangs gradually gave way to more organized trafficking groups, and the fight for territory pushed the homicide rates higher. Into that climate of rising violence stepped Wallace Sosa, the founder and host of Canal Libre, a show that was truly one of a kind. Despite the heavy subject matter, Canal Libre was theatrical. Flashy lights, loud music, and dance choreographies filled the studio between segments covering real violent crimes. A live audience reacted in real time. The program even had its own cast of characters. There was an ominous announcer known as Don Chicote, a clock puppet named Galarito, who mocked criminals and occasionally clashed with a member of the show known as Gil Dallas Vita. Their on-air feud sometimes became so over the top that it turned into comic relief. One of the moments viewers still talk about, Gil Dallas Vita became so furious that he tried to kick the puppet through its small window on set. Crew members rushed in to hold him back as he lunged and kicked toward the puppet. The chaos escalated when he went behind the scenes to find the puppeteer, who ran from out the window with Gil following him. Several people jumped in to restrain Gil, and he fell to the ground as laughter could be heard in the background. If you stumbled across this broadcast halfway through, you might have wondered what exactly you were watching.
sideshow entertainment, or investigative journalism documenting violence unfolding across the city, but then Wallace Souza would appear on the screen. He addressed the camera directly. His tone sharpened as he spoke about the bloodshed overtaking the house. He named alleged traffickers on the air. He accused politicians and authorities of abandoning ordinary citizens. Residents who witnessed the crimes often phoned Canal Libre first before contacting the police. The show's crews were known to reach scenes within minutes. Law enforcement, by contrast, could take hours, although sometimes they would arrive together. Souza would follow the police units and confront suspected gang members face to face on camera, reciting their crimes they were accused of, demanding responses. Viewers watched as alleged criminals shifted uncomfortably, cornered by broadcast scrutiny. Cameraman Jose Nilsen Guerrero reflected on Souza in an interview. The street gangs started to fear him. The gangs started to leave. When he got there, people would clap when they saw him. They liked him a lot. They really liked him. Souza's motivations traced back to 1997, when an elderly man in Manaus was murdered and dismembered. According to Canal Libre's website, the victim's family publicly expressed frustration with what they saw as inaction from local authorities. Moved by their plea for justice, Wallace Souza used his connections within the police to look into the case himself, and according to them, his efforts eventually helped identify the suspects, who were later arrested. At the time, Souza was already hosting an interview-based television program he had started in 1996, but after being involved in the investigation into the elderly man's death, the show gradually shifted toward crime reporting. By mid-1998, it had become the true crime program, Canal Libre. Before television,
I want to cancel this order and use money from this order to order food from another establishment on the beach. Can you please order without charge and food from Sunday because it has not been picked up yet. It is not fresh anymore. The quality is bad. I already told the establishment. They said that they do not need or it has been sitting there for over a I don't want to have to sit here and wait for the food to get here and then request a refund. Then I have to wait longer for my next order. What I agree with,
Wallace Souza served as a police officer in Manaus. However, the circumstances surrounding his departure remained disputed. Tomas Vasconcelos, the head of intelligence for the Arizona State Police, alleged that Souza had been dismissed over irregularities involving fuel diversion and pension-related crimes. Souza rejected those claims. Joining the end, he left the force in 1987 after being wrongly implicated in a university entrance exam fraud scheme, one he had been investigating. But most people eventually forgot he had ever been a police officer. His television presence was stronger than before in media, and he had something even more powerful, a personal connection with the public. Part of that connection came from his own life. Wallace Souza had lost his brother, Ulysses, to drugs. He spoke about it often. The loss, he said, changed him. For many viewers, that grief felt familiar. They, too, had lost loved ones to addiction. The
audience saw the anger they carried toward drug dealers and traffickers in the passion Wallace projected on screen in his fight against drugs. And this credibility eventually translated into votes. In 1998, Souza was elected state deputy for Amazonas, and for the next decade, he would remain one of the most voted state representatives in the region. And through it all, he stayed on television. Canal Libre expanded. More group members joined. His brothers Carlos and Fausto became part of the program. Together, the public began calling them the Courageous
This
Brothers.
is not a good
As Wallace's reputation continued to grow, so did the show. More reporters were dispatched
I
across
have
the
to
city.
wait for
The
the
coverage widened. The audience increased.
That is
Soon,
not.
the program was presenting itself something more than just a news broadcast. According to Canal Libre's own website, the program didn't just report crimes, it helped solve them. The first case highlighted on their website dates back to 1999, when a woman allegedly orchestrated a massacre against a family in the Puerto Quecada neighborhood in Manaus, killing children in a brutal attack. The Souza brothers, Carlos and Wallace, brought the case to public attention, pressured authorities, and pushed for action. Police eventually arrested the suspect. The woman, referred to as Dieta, was taken into custody and later sentenced to a long prison term. Another claim on their website centers on gang activity in the Colorado neighborhood in Manaus' East Zone. Canal Libre describes the area as overrun by youth gangs, armed with guns and blades, allegedly terrorizing residents to the point where they were too afraid to leave their homes. According to the show's narrative, Wallace and Carlos Souza joined forces with the Public Security Secretariat and the military police, identifying what they described as a local weapons workshop. A series of arrests reportedly followed, and the so-called empire of the gangs in Colorado was dismantled. While the program portrayed these events as major successes for the Souza brothers, it should be noted that they were unable to find independent records confirming those operations. That makes it difficult to determine if the events and the brothers' roles within them occurred as described. However, one incident involving Wallace Souza was well documented. In the early morning hours of November 9, 2005, a man held a family hostage, threatening to kill them if police intervened. But, he said, he would leave the family and go to jail if Wallace Souza came with him. As soon as Souza heard this, he rushed to the scene and negotiated with the man. The man repeated his demand. He feared he might be killed by police before reaching jail and wanted Wallace Souza as a guarantee of safe passage. Wallace agreed to go. The Canal Libre crew followed closely behind, reporting on the situation as it unfolded. Sosa rode in the same vehicle as the hostage taker, surrounded by police cars. At one point, a gunshot was heard. Moments later, a car carrying Sosa stopped, and Sosa exited the vehicle. It remains unclear who fired the shot and why. Canal Libre reporters were there to ask Sosa how he felt. Sosa explained that he tried to remain calm. According to him, the hostage taker had initially intended to surrender, but changed his mind during the drive to the prison. Footage from the scene afterward shows another person driving the car, while police vehicles followed behind. What happened to the hostage taker afterward remains unclear. After giving a statement at the police station, Sosa returned to the studio. As with other claims, independent coverage of the hostage scene is difficult to look at. Full circumstances remain unclear, but the viewers at home, the message was clear. They saw a man willing to put himself in danger on their behalf. In a city defined by rising violence, Wallace Souza appeared fearless, yet fame comes at a cost. As his influence expanded, both on television and inside the state legislative assembly, so did the list of people who had reason to resent him. He wasn't just targeting drug traffickers on it. He was naming politicians, accusing officials of incompetence, challenging power structures. Things really began to heat up when Wallace Souza's attention turned toward one of the most powerful figures in the state. As he would soon discover, challenging political power can be more dangerous than confronting criminals on the street. The Amazon River, 226 miles from Manaus, lies in the municipality of Cororte. Despite its remote location deep in the rainforest, Cororte had become one of the richest cities in the Amazonas. Beneath the surrounding forest lies the Urucu oil and gas field, one of Brazil's most valuable onshore energy reserves. The discovery transformed the region, turning Cororte into the second richest municipality in the state. But even though the city was earning so much, the general population wasn't benefiting from it. Sensing something was out of place, Wallace Souza started investigating deeper into the man at the top. Mayor Nadia Camila, speaking to a French television crew in 2009, he said he spent nearly 3 years gathering documents and speaking with witnesses. But before Souza could act, Brazil's federal police discovered approximately 12 million reais, around $5 million at the time, hidden inside a suburban house. But but as investigators listened through the recording via wiretaps, an extremely disturbing element was added to the case. The surveillance revealed the existence of a network involving the exploitation of underage girls connected to the piano. Prosecutors alleged that young girls were being recruited and brought to meet the mayor, often through intermediaries. The alleged illicit operations extended beyond a single individual. Authorities said it involved municipal officials, modeling agents, and in some cases, even the parents of the girls being trafficked. In exchange, these impoverished families were reportedly offered money, employment, or household goods. The revelations shocked Brazil. And for Wallace Sosa, they seemed to confirm the suspicions he'd had for years. But he believed there was still more to be exposed. Using the material he had already gathered, Wallace Sosa pushed the investigation further and initiated a parliamentary inquiry committee, known in Brazil as CPI. In Brazil's legislative system, a CPI is a powerful investigative body. Its purpose is to examine suspected wrongdoing by public officials and, if evidence is found, forward its conclusions to the judiciary for possible civil or criminal charges. Sosa believed the inquiry could finally bring accountability to Colombia's mayor, Adil Camino. For Wallace, the investigation also carried the potential for furthering his career in politics. It placed him at the center of one of the most significant corruption scandals in the state, but he would soon learn how powerful his opponent really was. According to Sosa, threats began almost immediately after the CPI was opened. He reported the threats to police, but claimed no action was taken. At the same time, witnesses and alleged victims were reportedly pressured not to speak about Adil Camino. Then, just 2 months after it began, the investigation stopped. The CPI was halted. Rather than weakening Camino, the situation revealed that he was far more powerful than many had originally believed. At the time, the mayor had a powerful ally, Amazonas governor Eduardo Braga. There was no definitive proof that Braga directly shut down the inquiry, but something changed inside the assembly. Enough legislators withdrew their support, and that was the reason the CPI was ultimately halted. For Wallace Sosa, it was a bitter defeat. For the victims whose stories were finally getting attention, it seemed their hope for justice disappeared just as quickly as the investigation itself. But behind the scenes, something else was already unfolding, something that would shock the people of Brazil even more. On October 20th, 2008, police received an anonymous tip. The caller warned them about a former military police officer, someone they described as highly dangerous. Officers arrived at the location around 9 a.m. and watched the house for 3 hours. Once they confirmed the man was in fact dealing drugs, they moved in. Inside, police discovered weapons, guns, and knives, along with the drugs. According to one investigator, he offered the officers a bribe, 10,000 reais, roughly $5,500 at the time, in exchange for letting him go. However, the police refused the man's bribe and arrested him. The man's name was Moachir Jorge de Costa, also known as Moa. According to the state's intelligence chief, Tomas Vasconcelos, Moa was already facing accusations connected to 9 separate homicides. Now, with drug trafficking charges added, the situation looked even worse. Facing the possibility of prison, Moa proposed a deal. He said he would give them valuable information if investigators could guarantee his safety. Moa was afraid of prison. He claimed he had many enemies behind bars and asked to be placed in an isolated cell or transferred to a military prison. Once authorities agreed, Moa described the organization he claimed to work for. It was part of a network of drug traffickers and contract killers, and according to him, the man leading that organization was state representative and beloved host of Canal Libre, Wallace Sosa. To everyone at the police station, the claim came as an absolute shock. Wallace Sosa was not only a politician, but also a family man who publicly despised drug dealers and traffickers. The country admired him, but Moa did not wait for the shot to settle. He continued. According to him, members of the organization met at Sosa's house where the killings were allegedly planned. Once the murders were carried out, the crew of Canal Libre would immediately arrive to film the body. If Moa's account was true, it would mean the reason the show's crew were so often the first to arrive at crime scenes was not because citizens called them before the police. It was because Sosa had orchestrated the crimes himself. These accusations were almost too insane to be true. The police took the claim seriously from the start. Together with prosecutors, they formed a special investigative unit dedicated to examining the allegations and determining whether any of them were true. The unit simply became known as the Task Force. The word traveled quickly and soon reached Wallace Sosa, who went directly to the state legislative assembly to defend himself. Standing before fellow representatives, Sosa argued that the accusations were part of a political plot designed to destroy him, and claimed he never met Moa. He urged lawmakers to stand by him and support his fight against what he called false claims. For many legislators, Sosa's defense sounded convincing. After all, he had far more credibility than Moa, a former military police officer already suspected in 9 homicides. Several state representatives publicly voiced their support, but only a few days later, something emerged that instantly ruined all of Sosa's credibility: a photograph. It arrived anonymously at several news stations. In the image, Moa was sitting beside State Representative Wallace Sosa in Sosa's old swimming pool at his house. From that moment on, Wallace was narrative fractured. Meanwhile, the task force was gathering evidence, some of which had been originally broadcast by Canal Libre itself. On August 28, 2008, the program aired footage from the scene of the burned body. During the broadcast, the reporter described several details. The victim was male. There were no bullet wounds. The gasoline had been poured into the body and was set fire. When investigators reviewed the footage, they immediately found this suspicious. How could the reporter know all of this? In the video, several people believed to be locals can be seen nearby, apparently among the first to discover the body. What is missing from the footage are forensic investigators, the ones who would normally confirm those kinds of details. But according to the state's intelligence secretary, Amos Vasconcelos, even if forensic investigators had been there, some of that information described on air would have been difficult to determine at the scene. The victim was later identified as 37-year-old Renato Fernandez Teixeira. According to investigators, Renato may have still been alive when he was set on fire. The last confirmed sighting of him came from the gym where he regularly worked out. Witnesses said he received a phone call and left. After that, no one saw him again. That is, until his smoldering remains were broadcast on national television. Relatives of witnesses declined to speak publicly about the case. It remains unclear whether they were pressured into silence or too afraid to become involved. And this problem wasn't limited to that case. The task force struggled to find people willing to speak about Wallace Sosa at all. Several potential witnesses reportedly refused, fearing retaliation from what investigators. The arrests reportedly followed, and the so-called empire of the gangs in Colorado was dismantled. While the program portrayed these events as major successes for the Sosa brothers, it should be noted that they were unable to find independent records confirming those operations. That makes it difficult to determine if the events and the brothers' roles within them occurred as described. However, one incident involving Wallace Sosa was well documented. In the early morning hours of November 9, 2005, a man held a family hostage, threatening to kill them if police intervened. But, he said, he would leave the family and go to jail if Wallace Sosa came with him. As soon as Sosa heard this, he rushed to the scene and negotiated with the man. The man repeated his demand. He feared he might be killed by police before reaching jail and wanted Wallace Sosa as a guarantee of safe passage. Wallace agreed to go. The Canal Libre crew followed closely behind, reporting on the situation as it unfolded. Sosa rode in the same vehicle as the hostage taker, surrounded by police cars. At one point, a gunshot was heard. Moments later, the car carrying Sosa stopped, and Sosa exited the vehicle. It remains unclear who fired the shot and why. Canal Libre reporters were there to ask Sosa how he felt. Sosa explained that he tried to remain calm. According to him, the hostage taker had initially intended to surrender, but changed his mind during the drive to the prison. Footage from the scene afterward shows another person driving the car while police vehicles followed behind. What happened to the hostage taker afterward remains unclear. After giving a statement at the police station, Sosa returned to the studio. As with other claims, independent coverage of the hostage incident is difficult to locate. The full circumstances remain unclear, but for viewers at home, the message was clear. They saw a man willing to put himself in danger on their behalf. In a city defined by rising violence, Wallace Sosa appeared fearless. Yet fame comes at a cost. As his influence expanded, both on television and inside the state legislative assembly, so did the list of people who had a reason to resent him. He wasn't just targeting drug traffickers on air. He was naming politicians, accusing officials of incompetence, challenging power structures. Things really began to heat up when Wallace Sosa's attention turned toward one of the most powerful figures in the state. As he would soon discover, challenging political power can be more dangerous than confronting criminals on the street. The Amazon River, 226 miles from the Mouse, lies the municipality of Gaori. Despite its remote location deep in the rainforest, Gaori had become one of the richest cities in the Amazonas. Beneath the surrounding forest lies the Urucu oil and gas field, one of Brazil's most valuable onshore energy reserves. The discovery transformed the region, turning Gaori into the second richest municipality in the state. the city was earning so much, the general population wasn't benefiting from it. Sensing something was out of place, Wallace Sosa started investigating deeper into the man at the top, Mayor Adil Canel. Speaking to a French television crew in 2009, he said he spent nearly 3 years gathering documents and speaking with witnesses. But before Sosa could act, Brazil's federal police discovered approximately 12 million reais, around $5 million at the time, hidden inside a suburban house. But as investigators listened through the recordings via wiretaps, an extremely disturbing element was added to the case. The surveillance revealed the existence of a network involving the exploitation of underage girls connected to Figueroa. Prosecutors alleged that young girls were being recruited and brought to meet the mayor, often through intermediaries. The alleged illicit operations extended beyond a single individual. Authorities said it involved municipal officials, modeling agents, and in some cases, even the parents of the girls being trafficked. In exchange, these impoverished families were reportedly offered money, employment, or household goods. The revelations shocked Brazil. And for Wallace Sosa, they seemed to confirm the suspicions he'd had for years. But he believed there was still more to be exposed. Using the material he had already gathered, Wallace Sosa pushed the investigation further and initiated a parliamentary inquiry committee, known in Brazil as CPI. In Brazil's legislative system, a CPI is a powerful investigative body. Its purpose is to examine suspected wrongdoing by public officials and, if evidence is found, forward its conclusions to the judiciary for possible civil or criminal charges. Sosa believed the inquiry could finally bring accountability to Colordo's mayor, Adil Figueroa. For Wallace, the investigation also carried the potential for furthering his career in politics. It placed him at the center of one of the most significant corruption scandals in the state, but he would soon learn how powerful his opponent really was. According to Sosa, threats began almost immediately after the CPI was opened. He reported the threats to police, but claimed no action was taken. At the same time, witnesses and alleged victims were reportedly pressured not to speak about Adil Figueroa. And then, just 2 months after it began, the investigation stopped. The CPI was halted. Rather than weakening Figueroa, the situation revealed that he was far more powerful than many had originally believed. At the time, the mayor had a powerful ally, Amazonas Governor Eduardo Braga. There is no definitive proof that Braga directly shut down the inquiry. But something changed inside the assembly. Enough legislators withdrew their support, and that was the reason the CPI was ultimately halted. For Wallace Sosa, it was a bitter defeat. For the victims whose stories were finally getting attention, it seemed their hope for justice disappeared just as quickly as the investigation itself. But behind the scenes, something else was already unfolding, something that would shock the people of Brazil even more. On October 20th, 2008, police received an anonymous tip. The caller warned them about a former military police officer, someone they described as highly dangerous. Officers arrived at the location around 9 a.m. and watched the house for 3 hours. Once they confirmed the man was in fact dealing drugs, they moved in. Inside, police discovered weapons, guns, and knives, along with the drugs. According to one investigator, he offered the officers a bribe, 10,000 reais, roughly $5,500 at the time, in exchange for letting him go. However, the police refused the man's bribe and arrested him. The man's name was Moashir Jorge da Costa, also known as Moa. According to the state's intelligence chief, Tomas Vasconcelos, Moa was already facing accusations connected to 9 separate homicides. Now, with drug trafficking charges added, the situation looked even worse. Facing the possibility of prison, Moa proposed a deal. He said he would give them valuable information if investigators could guarantee his safety. Moa was afraid of prison. He claimed he had many enemies behind bars and asked to be placed in an isolated cell or transferred to a military prison. Once authorities agreed, Moa described the organization he claimed he worked for. He was part of a network of drug traffickers and contract killers, and according to him, the man leading that organization was state representative and beloved host of Canal Libre, Wallace Sosa. To everyone at the police station, the claim came as an absolute shock. Wallace Sosa was not only a politician, but also a family man, publicly despised drug dealers and traffickers. The country admired him, but Moa did not wait for the shock to settle. He continued. According to him, members of the organization met at Sosa's house where the killings were allegedly planned. Once the murders were carried out, the crew of Canal Libre would immediately arrive to dump the body. If Moa's account was true, it would mean the reason the show's crew were so often the first to arrive at crime scenes was not because citizens called them before the police. It was because Sosa had orchestrated the crimes himself. These accusations were almost too insane to be true. The police took the claim seriously from the start. Together with prosecutors, they formed a special investigative unit dedicated to examining the allegations and determining whether any of them were true. The unit simply became known as the Task Force. The word traveled quickly and soon reached Wallace Sosa, who went directly to the state legislative assembly to defend himself. Standing before fellow representatives, Sosa argued that the accusations were part of a political plot designed to destroy him and claimed he never met Boa. He urged lawmakers to stand by him and support his fight against what he called false claims. For many legislators, Sosa's defense sounded convincing. After all, he had far more credibility than Boa, a former military police officer already suspected in 9 homicides. Several state representatives publicly voiced their support, but only a few days later, something emerged that instantly ruined all of Sosa's credibility: a photograph. It arrived anonymously at several news stations. In the image, Boa was sitting beside State Representative Wallace Sosa in Sosa's own swimming pool at his house. From that moment on, Wallace's narrative fractured. Meanwhile, the task force was gathering evidence, some of which had been originally broadcast by Canal Libre itself. On August 28, 2008, the program aired footage from the scene of the burned body. During the broadcast, the reporter described several details. The victim was male. There were no bullet wounds, and gasoline had been poured over the body and was set fire. When investigators reviewed the footage, they immediately found this suspicious. How could the reporter know all of this? In the video, several people believed to be locals can be seen nearby, apparently among the first to discover the body. What is missing from the footage are forensic investigators, the ones who would normally confirm those kinds of details. But according to the state's intelligence secretary, Tomas Vasconcelos, even if forensic investigators had been there, some of that information described on air would have been difficult to determine at the scene. The victim was later identified as 37-year-old Renato Fernandez Teixeira. According to investigators, Renato may have still been alive when he was set on fire. The last confirmed sighting of him came from the gym where he regularly worked out. Witnesses said he received a phone call and left. After that, no one saw him again. That is, until the smoldering remains were broadcast on national television. Relatives of witnesses declined to speak publicly about the case. It remains unclear whether they were pressured into silence or too afraid to become involved. And this problem wasn't limited to that case. The task force struggled to find people willing to speak about Wallace Sosa at all. Several potential witnesses reportedly refused, fearing retaliation from what investigators were beginning to suspect was a larger criminal network connected to Sosa. Eventually, one man came forward, Pedras Marquez Sampaio, a former military officer who had previously worked closely with Sosa and his team. According to investigators, he had spent significant time around the television crew and the host's inner circle. Pedras described several incidents to the task force. One of them involved was a man named Enrique, who was allegedly a drug dealer who was captured, again, on Canal Libre. September 4th, 2008, the program aired a segment filmed at what the reporter described as a lucky find. When the crew arrived at the aftermath of the shooting, the victim, Enrique, was still alive. In the footage, he can be seen rolling on the ground, struggling as he bled. But Pedras had more to say about the shooting. According to him, a member of the Canal Libre team privately told him what actually happened. Pedras said the team member didn't know why Enrique was killed, but they did say the person responsible for the killing was Boa, and the person driving the car was Rafael Sosa, Wallace Sosa's son. As the investigation expanded, Wallace Sosa adjusted his earlier statements. At first, he insisted he had never met Boa. Later, he acknowledged knowing the man, who claimed he only knew him as Jorge, and that their interaction had been brief. According to Sosa, they had just met once, at that moment captured in the photograph that was circulating in the media. Others in Sosa's circle moved quickly to support that explanation. One of Sosa's bodyguards and his driver told investigators that Boa had not been connected to Sosa directly. Instead, he said he was a friend of Rafael Sosa, his son, but the task force quickly disproved those claims. They examined Boa's phone records and found multiple calls between Boa and members of Sosa's staff, along with nearly 20 calls made to Wallace Sosa himself. Investigators began to piece together a theory. According to the task force, the alleged organization did not begin with murders. It evolved gradually. At first, members reportedly kept money seized during raids on suspected drug traffickers. Later, they began keeping the drugs themselves. From there, the group started eliminating rival dealers in order to control territory. And each time a killing occurred, the Canal Libre crew was there, filming the aftermath. The violence served two purposes. control of the drug trade, and control of the ratings. Investigators knew that getting to Wallace Sosa directly would be difficult due to a strange law in the Brazilian Constitution. As a sitting state representative in parliamentary immunity, a legal protection that limited when and how legislators could be arrested or prosecuted. Because of this, any case against him would require authorization from the legislature or higher court, which complicated any attempt to charge or arrest him by official authorities. But when witnesses alleged that his son, Rafael Sosa, had been involved in a homicide, that changed the situation. It gave the task force a way in. Police obtained a search warrant targeting Rafael. By doing so, investigators were able to legally search the home where he lived, which also happened to be his father's house. The task force first searched Rafael's car, where they found 380 caliber pistol magazines. From there, they moved inside the house. Investigators found Wallace's personal safe, and once they opened it, they found large amounts of cash, approximately 243,000 Brazilian reais, along with 15,000 American dollars in cash. In Wallace's personal briefcase, they discovered a list detailing various firearms. The search continued, and in the Rafael Sosa's bedroom, investigators discovered another locked safe. When Rafael opened it, officers found a plastic bag containing 9 spent bullet casings, along with a handwritten paper listing the names of several drug dealers who had been killed. Investigators also discovered multiple rounds of ammunition in the room. Rafael Sosa was arrested on the spot and charged with illegal weapons possession. And drug trafficking. Although his son was arrested, Wallace Sosa himself remained free, protected by parliamentary immunity. But the pressure was building. Sosa tried to defend his public image. He explained that the large amounts of cash found in his home were related to his serious health problems. According to him, his condition could become critical at any moment, and he kept the money close in case he suddenly needed expensive medical treatment to save his life. As for the list of weapons discovered in his briefcase, he said the list had been prepared as part of a segment that was supposed to air on Canal Libre. Meanwhile, the task force continued making arrests. After Rafael Sosa was taken into custody, investigators detained 8 additional men they believed were connected to the same criminal network. Like Rafael, they were charged with illegal weapons possession and drug trafficking. During searches of their homes, police recovered firearms and ammunition that investigators said matched many of the weapons listed on Wallace Sosa's list. The pressure around Sosa was mounting. Despite his enduring popularity in the polls, Sosa now faced the real possibility of impeachment. If the state legislative assembly removed him from office, he would lose the immunity that had protected him until then. Prosecutors would be able to charge him as an ordinary citizen. That would mean prison. And for a man who had publicly confronted gangs, traffickers, and criminals for years, prison carried an additional risk. Many of the people he had helped put behind bars would be there, waiting. Then, in October 2009, after months of political tension and investigation,